A simple way to add animation to a website, a blog, or a web banner is to create a GIF animation in Photoshop. The advantage of animated GIFs over other animation formats is that animated GIFs can play in any web browser without any special plugins or code. However, you don't want to make an animated GIF too complex, because this format can get very big in file size if you include too many frames or if the artwork is too complicated. The animated GIF format is best suited for short, simple animations like those you might see in ads or logos. There are several ways to create animated GIFs in Photoshop. You can use tweening to automatically animate layer visibility, layer position, or layer effects, as I'll show you how to do later in this chapter. In this movie, I'm going to cover a more manual method of animating, using what's called frame-by-frame animation. The key to this method is to start with a layered file, like the one here, in which you've made individual pieces of artwork on separate layers. For example, in the Layers panel here, you can see that I have multiple layers, and if I click in the visibility icon to the left of each one, you can see what's on each layer. So here is what is on the S layer, here's what's on the U layer, the R layer, and the F layer. Each of those layers contains a single hand-drawn letter on a transparent background. What I'd like to have happen during the animation is for each of these letters to appear briefly on screen in sequence, and that will be the simple animation. I'm going to start building this frame-by-frame animation by opening the Animation panel. I'll go to the Window menu and I'll choose Animation. By the way, I've turned my application frame off so that I can bring the Animation panel up high enough that you can see it. I happen to be working in Photoshop CS4 Extended. If you're not, you won't see this measurement log tab here, and the label on your animation panel may look a bit different, but it is the same animation panel. And if you happen to be working on Photoshop CS4 Extended, and your animation panel doesn't look like this, but instead it looks like a timeline, you can change it back to this view by going to the panel menu on the right side of that timeline and choosing Convert to Frame Animation. When I open the animation panel, I see the first frame of the animation automatically, and it displays only the layers that are currently visible over here in the Layers panel. Now I'm going to make a second frame in the animation panel by clicking this icon here, the second from the right, which is the Add Frame icon, and that creates frame number 2 in this animation. To start with, frame number 2 is an exact copy of frame number 1, but I want to make a change on frame number 2, so I'll make sure that there is this light blue highlight around frame 2, and then I'm going to go over to the Layers panel, and I'm going to click in the visibility field of this S layer to make the contents of that layer visible on frame 2. And now if I click on frame 1, you don't see the S. If I click on frame 2, you do see the S. I'm going to make a third frame. With frame 2 selected, I'll go to the Add Frame icon in the animation panel. I'll click, and that creates frame 3, an exact copy of frame 2. With frame 3 highlighted, I'll go over to the Layers panel to change some content. I'm going to turn the S layer off by clicking in its visibility field, and I'll turn the U layer on. And now I'm going to create 2 more frames the same way, each with separate layer content. I'll go back to the animation panel and click the Add Frame icon again to create frame 4, which is now a copy of frame 3. With frame 4 highlighted, I'll go over to the Layers panel and I'll turn off the U layer and turn on the R layer. I'll do that one more time. In the animation panel, click the Add Frame button, go over to the Layers panel, turn off the R layer, and turn on the F layer. Now if I click through the various frames, you can start to see how the animation is going to look. There's one more piece of artwork on another layer in the Layers panel that I would like to have appear on all of the frames in the animation, and that's the artwork on the flowers layer here. I happen to have frame 5 selected at the moment, and I'm going to go over to the Layers panel and make that flowers layer visible. The flowers now appear on frame 5 of the animation, but not on any of the other frames. So here's how you make the contents of a layer ripple through to the other frames in an animation. I'm going back to the Layers panel again, and this time I'm going to click directly on the flowers layer to highlight that layer. That makes these Unify icons available here at the top of the Layers panel. I'm going to click on the center one. This is a Unify Layer Visibility icon. And in this message, I'm going to click the Match button. The content of the flowers layer appears on all of the frames in the animation, so I can click through all of them and see the flowers there. Now I'm going to preview the animation, and I can use the controls here at the bottom of the animation panel to do that. I'll click the double-pointed arrow to go back to frame 1, and then I'll click the right-facing play button. That was the animation. As you can see, it's playing way too fast. So the next step is to add some time between each one of the frames in the animation. To do that, I'm going to make sure I have the last frame selected, and then I'll hold the Shift key down and I'll select the first frame, and that gets all the frames in between too. And then I'm going to click on this time menu at the bottom of any one of these selected frames, and from the pop-up menu of seconds, I'm going to choose perhaps 1 second as the delay between each one of these frames. It's always just a guess, and you can go back and change it if you don't like the result. I'd like to have a little extra delay on the first frame, and so I'm going to click back on frame 1, go to its time menu, and I'll choose 2 seconds for that extra bit of hesitation at the beginning of the animation, because I'm going to have the animation play more than once. To make that happen, I'm going to come down to this menu, which currently is labeled once, click there, and from here I can choose a number of times that the animation will play. In this case, I don't want it to play forever. Instead, I'm just going to have it play 3 times. And if you don't see 3 times in this menu, you can click Other, and in the Loop Count dialog box, you can set the number of times that you want the animation to play. So I'll cancel there, and from this menu, I'm going to choose 3 times. And now I'm going to preview by clicking the play button here. The animation plays and hesitates here, and plays again, hesitates, and plays a 3rd time. And that's great. That's just the way that I wanted it to look. Keep in mind that the time delays that I've set here are not really exact, because the speed at which a GIF animation will play depends in part on the processing speed of the viewer's computer. So the times that you see here are really more relative than exact. Now that I'm done building this animation, it's time to optimize it as a GIF and save it. To do that, I'm going to go up to the File menu and down to Save for Web and Devices. I'll work in the Optimize tab, and I'm going to use the controls over on the right to optimize this animated GIF just as I would any GIF. The controls are just the same. The Format menu here must be set to GIF because none of these other choices will animate. There's no such thing as an animated JPEG. And notice that there's no choice here for exporting a SWIF. If you're interested in creating a SWIF file, then you'll need to use another application like Adobe Flash or After Effects. So I'm going to set this to GIF, and then I'll go to the Colors field, and I'll try to increase the number of colors here because I see that the photograph in the background of this GIF doesn't look very good. In the Colors field, I'm going to choose the maximum number of possible colors in a GIF, 256, and I'm still not happy with the appearance of that photograph in the background. And down here on the bottom left of the preview, I see that my animated GIF is going to be pretty big. So I could try to tweak the GIF controls, perhaps by getting rid of the lossy compression here and trying to add some dither in, but I still don't like the look of that photograph, and now the file is way too big. So the upshot is that when you're including a photograph in an animated GIF, you may have to live with less than perfect photo quality, or you may have to go back to your original file and modify the design. Let me show you how I might do that in this case. I'm going to click the Cancel button, and I'm going to go back to Photoshop. Here in the Layers panel, I'm going to look inside this BG layer group, and there I can see the photo layer that contains this photograph in the background. I'm going to change that photograph into a graphic. To do that, I'll select the photo layer, and I'll go up to the Filter menu at the top of the screen and choose Convert for Smart Filters. I always like to apply the Smart Filter command before adding a filter, because that way I'll always be able to come back and tweak the filter options if I want to. You can see the special Smart Object or Smart Filter icon there on the photo layer. I'm now going back to the Filter menu and down to the Artistic category of filters, and from there I'm going to choose the Cutout filter. That opens the filter gallery here, with the cutout filter selected and a preview of how the image will look with this particular filter applied. There are options over on the right that I can tweak. I'm just going to leave these at the settings that you see now, 8, 3, and 1, and I'm going to click OK. As you can see here in the document window, my photograph no longer looks like a photo. It looks like a graphic made from a photo, but I kind of like this look, and this often comes in handy and will reduce the file size of my animated GIF. Notice also that that change has rippled through all of the frames in this animation, and the reason is that I had frame number 1 selected when I made the change, and by default in the Layers panel, this box, Propagate Frame 1, is checked. So that means that any changes that you make with frame 1 selected will propagate or ripple through to all the other frames. Now I can go back and optimize this image as a GIF by choosing File, Save for Web and Devices. I think the image looks pretty good right now with 64 colors and a little bit of lossy compression and no dither. So I'm going to go with that. I also like the file size, which is less than 20 kilobytes for all the frames of this animation. One thing to keep in mind when you're optimizing an animated GIF is that all of the frames in the animation are going to optimize with the same settings. So I like to go through the frames one by one using the controls down here on the bottom right of the Save for Web and Devices window to make sure that all the frames look good with the settings that I've chosen. So I'm going to click the play button down here at the bottom right, and that will play the animation going through each frame so that I can check whether it looks good with these settings. And I think it's fine, so I'll click the stop button. I could also use this control right here, which takes me through the frames one by one if I want to manually see how each frame looks with these settings. When I'm satisfied, I'm going to click the Save button, and I'm going to navigate to my desktop. From the Format menu of the Save Optimized As window, instead of HTML and images, I'm going to choose Images Only. That's because GIFs are self-running. They don't need HTML to play. So I'm just going to save out a single GIF file here, no HTML. And I'll save this GIF to my desktop by clicking Save. Now I'm going back out to my desktop, and there is my GIF. I'll open that in a web browser so that you can see it play. And here it will play through 3 times and then stop. So that's the frame-by-frame animation method that you can apply in Photoshop to create a simple GIF animation by turning layer visibility on and off across the various frames of the animation. You can bring the animated GIF, just like any GIF file, into a website building program like Dreamweaver to include a little bit of motion on your web page.